This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
So why do seagulls live near the sea? Because if they lived near the bay, they'd be bagels. Welcome to Wings and Things, where you'll find real answers to real questions about everything you want to know about pet birds. Care, feeding, bird products, travel, and more. Everything to make your frequent flyer a happy camper. From parrots to parakeets, cockatiels to cockatoos, you'll have a bird's eye view of everything there is to know about your fun, feathered friends. So, spread your wings and get ready to fly on Wings and Things.
Welcome to Wings and Things on Pet Life Radio. I'm your host, Robin Shawokis. Barbara's on the road this week, and I am at the New England Wildlife Center in Weymouth, Massachusetts. And today I'll be speaking with Dr. Greg Mertz, the Odd Pet Vet. And we'll be discussing some common citizen ailments, some preventative care for your companion parrots, and a little bit about what goes on here at the Wildlife Center. We'll be right back after these messages.
Sitting on a branch overlooking the parking lot, the pigeons watched as a Mercedes pulled in below them. "What do you think?" one bird said to the other. "Should we put a deposit on that car?" Stay perched. Wings and Things will be soaring back right after these messages.
I'll be back.
What if you could protect the life of your cat with something so simple and affordable that you already use every day? Get ready for the evolution of kitty litter. It's Pretty Litter. Along with all the features you've come to expect from your kitty litter, Pretty Litter's patented and scientific formula will also monitor your cat's health and detect illnesses early while providing industry-leading odor control. 2 kitty litters, same cat, same price. But there's one important difference. Pretty Litter reacts to your cat's waste by detecting health issues simply by changing color. And the key is that Pretty Litter detects these issues before your cat shows symptoms of physical illness or pain, likely saving you major dollars in vet bills while protecting the health of your cat. What do you think, little guy? Ready to switch litter? Pretty Litter. Colorful insight into your cat's health.
Go to prettylittercats.com/cat101 or use coupon code CAT101 to get 20% off your first subscription order.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
A Frenchman walks into a bar with a parrot on his shoulder. The bartender asks, "Where did you get that thing?" The parrot replies, "In France. There are millions of them." Don't have a canary. Wings and Things is back.
Welcome back to Wings and Things on Pet Life Radio. Hi, Dr. Mertz. How are you?
Nice to see you.
You too.
Thank you.
Welcome to Wings and Things. You've got a really interesting job here at the Wildlife Center.
I have too many jobs.
Too many jobs.
Here
Too
at the
many
Wildlife
interesting
Center.
things.
No, actually, it really is a job made to order, and it includes everything from taking out the trash to helping teach classes, and also doing lots of veterinary care for both wildlife, but also pet birds and other animals.
So how did you get into veterinary medicine in the first place? Is it a lifelong passion? Or?
Not a lifelong passion at all, actually, and I'm a good example and encourage anybody who wants to do a career change that it's very doable and something you should follow and try to do. I actually started to go to veterinary school because I wanted to become a better teacher.
Okay.
I wanted to know. I'm a teacher by trade, not a classroom teacher, but rather a museum and nature center type of extracurricular teacher, especially in environmental education. And it seemed to me, as I looked around at the different programs, that the place that you got the best solid biology education, sort of the best well-rounded biology education, was in the field of veterinary medicine. So I started down the road of going to veterinary school for that purpose, but very quickly and very solidly fell in love with the process of veterinary medicine. And I enjoy the clinical setting, especially with clients, because every client and every exam room and every appointment is really a mini classroom. And it gives an example, it gives an opportunity to talk a lot about the biology of different kinds of organisms, especially in the kind of medicine we do. We don't treat dogs and cats here at all. We don't treat horses and cows, but we do treat about 300, maybe a little over 300 different species of animals.
It's a pretty wide knowledge base there, then.
It's a real thin knowledge base,
Is it?
too.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I joke about that a little bit. No, what your typical physician and your usual veterinarian who sees dogs and cats or horses and cows, they have a lot of depth of knowledge about every little syndrome and every little physiological issue and problem that dogs and cats get or humans get. And in our case, we don't have probably any more knowledge than they do. It's just spread very to the left and very to the right.
Okay.
So
it's really interesting. Seeing the number of different kinds of animals that come in. And like you say, every opportunity, every time someone comes in, it is a teaching opportunity that, and it's that person may need to know just a little bit more about how to care for their animals or what, preventative things like that. And so what are the things that you, especially with parrots, that's our focus on this podcast, but what are the things that you see the most coming through the door as far as issues with parrots?
Issues with parrots, I think probably the most common issues and problems that people have. Now, I'm not even sure we would technically refer to them as veterinary medicine, but more husbandry and just basic care.
Okay.
The interesting thing with most parrots is most people who have them are very much concerned about beak and toenails and wing trims, things of that sort. So that's probably the most common reason that animals come to us. Then in terms of disease processes, probably the most common things are respiratory infections, respiratory conditions. I won't even say infections, but rather conditions, respiratory conditions of one sort or another. Everything from sinusitis to pneumonia and severe pneumonia. And the second probably most common disease is gastrointestinal upsets. Coming in with diarrhea from one thing or another, either from diet changes or something they've eaten, or technically getting a bacterial infection or a little viral infection or something like that. Those are the two really common disease processes. There's another really common disease process, and I'm gonna not call it quite a disease process, but rather a behavioral process. And the behavior disease is feather picking,
right,
and self-mutilation. And so those 3 or 4 different categories really sort of embrace probably 95% of what we do.
I think it's really interesting that you call the feather destructive or the feather plucking a behavioral issue, or refer to it that way, because we did a whole podcast on feather destructive behavior, and the first thing we tell people is to rule out a physical ailment, that there isn't a physical reason for this behavior, and then treat it as you would any other behavior that you want to modify. And I'm afraid that in a lot of cases people do take their parrots to the vets, and then they end up with a slew of medication or creams or whatever for feather destructive behavior, and it may not always be necessary.
I think a lot of the issue, at least in my practice and in the odd pet vet practice, most of the cases that I see, I would say 99% of the cases I see are reasonably unrelated to a infectious and or metabolic disease process.
Okay.
I think, I have a couple of reactions to it, and one is that every time you have any dyscrasia, whatever, whether it's based on a skin problem or a feather problem or even a gastrointestinal or blood problem, whenever you have a dyscrasia of any sort, you immediately can begin to quantify it in medical terms.
Mm-hmm.
But the real underlying, almost always, the underlying issues are about the natural, what I'm going to call the natural history of where those birds came from.
Yeah.
And understanding that and understanding how to manipulate that environment, if possible, if you can manipulate that environment, allows the body's own immune system and allows the body's own healing systems to, in most cases, correct those medical and entrees. In other words, those entry points that we as veterinarians are going to manipulate. From my angle, I think it's much better to manipulate the environment, the enrichment process, the flock behavior, and those kinds of things.
Those are all things that, when I do my workshop, that I talk to people about, that you do need to figure out what this animal really is. Not, yes, it's your pet, but what is it before that? What is it historically? What is it, not just that animal itself, but the species? Where, what's the species story? And then you work from there back down to what you're going to give your bird in particular. And one of the things I tell people is you can address a lot of behavioral issues with enrichment, and sometimes once you've ruled out that medical piece, if you can create a situation where that bird is getting those things that it may be lacking because it is in your house in a cage, if you can come as close to that natural stimuli as possible, you win.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And I also would say that these are controllable variables in only part of the occasions, meaning that there are just simply going to be some things biologically that we can't manipulate or perform. A lot of birds, I may be out of step with scientific rigor on this, but a lot of birds will imprint. I think a lot of birds will not necessarily imprint. Okay, and I think there's a strength, sort of a degree of how imprinted a bird can become, and I think in those species where there's a real strong imprinting between caretaker and bird, I think your ability to manipulate the setting becomes more and more difficult.
And I think too, and this is not a criticism of some of our relationships with our pet birds, but I think in some cases we create that illusion, if you will, of an imprinted situation.
Yes.
And that's not to say that we're not, that folks aren't fabulous parrot owners and,
Sure.
wanting to do what's the very best for their animal. But sometimes we create those situations. And I know myself, I've created behavioral issues with my bird just by virtue of my actions.
Sure.
And I think
Sure.
sometimes,
So have I.
that needs to be considered as well, too.
Sure. No, I agree. And unfortunately, because of the developmental steps by which a bird learns behavior, sometimes once they learn it, they can't reverse it. And you're right. I think in many cases, people, because we're people and they're birds. I mean, people often come to me and they'll say, "Well, just how smart is an Amazon, or just how smart is an African gray?" And my immediate sort of glib response is, they're way better at being an African gray than you are.
Right.
They're way better at being an Amazon than you are. And I think that there has to be a real significant recognition that two species are drawn to each other, and our two species are very much interacting with each other. But the communication process, however you create it, however you try to recreate it to be as close to nature as possible, it's always going to fail. Sure. At some level.
Let me ask you this: with feather destructive behavior, which is, we hear it. I get questions all the time. We get suggestions for doing another podcast on that. How crucial is it that you fix that situation? I've had people say to me, "Oh, well, feather plucking can be just like biting your nails." Is that the case? I mean, I've had people say, "Oh, that bird's so unhappy, he has no feathers." Is that the direction we need to go? Is it something that, yes, you want to try to alleviate, but if you can't, is it critical?
I think it depends on the bird. I think it depends on the species. And I think in large measure depends upon who the caretaker is. Okay. Again, I think what's happening is we sort of anthropomorphize what that bird is feeling by having done feather destructive behavior.
Right.
And if we were pulling out all of our hair or all of the hair on our body, we would be saying, "Oh, that'd be really uncomfortable."
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, if the animal is mutilating itself and digging through skin and muscle and whatever, that's a significant, serious problem that does need both medical intervention and significant behavioral intervention. I guess what I would like to do, Robin, is to just back up a second and just talk a little bit about, I think, what some of these triggers are, and the triggers for and I think that by doing that, I think it'll help us sort out which birds are the ones that really need significant intervention and which ones are not. And the feather plucking behavior, I think what I like to say about birds, parrots of all sorts, citizens of all sorts, they have a fairly limited vocabulary. And I'm not talking about English vocabulary or human vocabulary. I'm talking about their own vocabulary of behavioral responses. And so when they get excited, they need an outlet for that excitement. And that excitement can be anger, that excitement can be happiness, that excitement can be frustration, it can be a number of different feelings. Again, we're anthropomorphizing and layering this on, but it makes sense. And you have these different they have these different behavioral responses, but they don't have a lot of way of showing those or allowing those behaviors to come out. So one of the ways that birds significantly show frustration in the wild and show fear in the wild and show anger in the wild is to get up and fly away. Now, some birds are really good flyers and some birds are really good creepers and climbers, and so those birds that jump up and fly away when they're in a cage or even in a house, even if they're flying free in the house, they're still limited in what that behavior reaction is, and so they're sort of forced then to the next behavior in their repertoire of vocabulary, and in most cases that is to groom.
Okay.
If you're going to be a good bird, then you're going to groom, and you're going to groom, and you're going to groom, and you're going to groom. So it's a sort of a very natural process. And some species are bigger groomers than others, and some individuals within the species are more groomers than others are. In other words, there's latitude within the species itself, but then within the whole family or class of animals, there's also a lot of variety.
Sure.
And so, to go back to that, who needs to get care and who doesn't, I think really has to do with that owner, that caretaker at home, looking at the setting, looking at who their bird is, and understanding whether or not they've been given an outlet to fly away from a stimulus, or whether they're going to have to groom their way out of a stimulus, and if there are ways that they can manipulate that vocabulary.
Okay.
Are there other ways to do that?
That's a really interesting approach, and I think it's so important for almost any kind of behavior that you're seeing from your bird, that you need to allow them those outlets, whatever it may be. And a lot of times we talk about providing a lot of enrichment or providing a lot of different alternatives. But the one thing that I keep coming back to is you need to allow them that flight, not necessarily flying flight, but that fight or flight response. You need to allow them that flight opportunity, right, that they don't have to actually interact with something or someone if they choose not to. Right. And I think we were talking the other day, some colleagues and I, about birds that had really been manhandled and abused pretty much. And I think a lot of times people go to that place where I can force this bird to do things because I'm bigger than it is.
Right.
And in the zoo field, you try that with the lion. You go in there with, and see how that works for you, But I think sometimes we forget, and we do that. So now, what are some, actually we're going to take a break right here. And when we come back, I'd like to talk to you about what are some of the things people should do for preventative care and what they should look for and to figure out that they need to come see you or somebody like you.
I look forward to it.
All right, so we'll be right back after these messages.
Stay perched. Wings and Things will be soaring back right after these messages.
Put on a perfectly possum pet party. Having an awesome birthday or adoption day celebration for your four-legged friend? Or just want a fun excuse to throw a fun party with your friends from the dog park? Deck out your party with Molly and Bandit Pet Party accessories. Party products designed specifically for pets. There are wearables, including adjustable pet party hats, bow ties, and tutus. The photo prop kits include funny glasses and hats. The party supplies and decorations include coordinating table covers, party banners, cake decorations, and treat bowls, cups, and bags. Everything you need to create great memories and Instagram-worthy photos. They're available in 2 colorful themes, tropical and fireman. It's a dog's life. Celebrate it with Molly and Bandit Pet Party at mollyandbanditpetparty.com/petlife.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
A Frenchman walks into a bar with a parrot on his shoulder. The bartender asks, "Where did you get that thing?" The parrot replies, "In France. There are millions of them." Don't have a canary. Wings and Things is back.
Welcome back to Wings and Things. I'm your host, Robin Shawokis on Pet Life Radio, and I'm talking today with Dr. Greg Mertz from the New England Wildlife Center and the Odd Pet Vet. Welcome back, Greg.
Nice to be here.
So, preventative care, or actually, we can do either, whichever you choose first. Preventative, or let's do preventative, and then if the preventative doesn't work, when do we need to come and see you?
Okay, sure. Preventative care. I think preventative care starts with husbandry. And I think starts with that human-animal bond or that human-bird bond. And so the things that I find useful when I'm talking with clients, one of the very first things that I talk about with new bird owners, and this goes, to the very elementary, to the very simple minded, but I think one of the very first things you need to talk about is good diet. Mm-hmm. And in my world, I love... I think there's a number of really good diets on the market. I think one person is going to prefer one over another. Sure. I don't think that I have a real strong opinion about that too much one way or the other. I do know that having a regular pelleted or formulated diet for a bird is a good thing to have in the mix. Mm-hmm. I also think it's really important that they have a variety of things that they can also, knowing which birds are nut eaters and which ones are fruit eaters, and etc., and then being able to provide those kinds of foods and variety in their surroundings. And if you have that set up, in other words, if you have a good diet going and you have a bird that has a good bond with its owner, I think 95% of your problems are probably over. Mm-hmm. And those are not necessarily easy to come by. And I can't say that I think that I can't say enough that the bond between that caretaker and that bird is the essential ingredient to health. Right. Once that bond is established and once that bond is understood and given some latitude to develop, you get the diets and everything running, then your animals are going to be in good health. Mm-hmm. Then, in terms of preventative care, I think the things that I can most caution people against are the hazards inside of the house. And I think there's a fair number of hazards. I'm all in favor of having birds be able to move around the inside of their house or their building, wherever they're living. At the same time, you don't want to set up sort of built-in obstacles or hazards, things like big wide open windows that look like they can fly and go out through them. Mm-hmm. It's pretty simple-minded. At the same time, we see a fair number of birds that come to us because they've been knocked goony, because they whack up against something, or sure, they think there's a problem. Another thing you want to, and I guess in those cases you want to keep your windows with blinds on them, and with blinds that are allow a limited amount of light, or whatever amount of light you want to leave, as long as they don't see it as something as a passageway, mm-hmm, through a woodland or shrub area. Other things that I find as real significant hazards are stoves. Yeah. Stoves are huge. People cooking are huge. And then right away, as soon as we start talking about cooking, of course, if you are cooking with birds in your house, I think birds need to be not in the same area. Right. They need to be restricted from that, because I can't tell you how many times I have had birds come into me who have landed in the cooking spaghetti sauce.
Right.
And who have come in because someone was cooking with Teflon, and there was a burned pot, and they inhale the toxins from that. So I think there needs to be separation between cooking and where the birds are living and able to manipulate and maneuver around.
Now, you had mentioned the respiratory before when we were speaking. What do you see as the causes of those particular?
Both the gastrointestinal diseases and the respiratory diseases, in most cases, I think are created and caused by an ill-adapted bird. Okay, so I don't think that these are birds do come down with highly pathogenic bacteria, but I think most of the cases we see are created by opportunistic bacteria.
Okay.
So what's happening is the animal, at some level, is going through a stressful event in its life, and as the stress levels increase, so does the cortisol levels also physiologically increase inside the animal. And as the cortisol levels rise in the body, these are chemicals that are put out by the adrenal gland, same with people and dogs and cats and birds. As that cortisol is increased inside of the system, that depresses the immune response. And not only do you have a depression of the immune response, but you also have a little bit of a depression of the available resource to allow the animal to be healthy. So I think for most GI infections and most respiratory infections, there's an ill-adapted bird. That's why I was going back to the very first thing, which was if you have a well-adapted bird, then these other things are probably unlikely to happen. But now realize that stress can come from an animal being ill-adapted. It can also come from other events. Time of year, even though they may have perfectly lighted systems inside the house, there's still a circadian rhythm that they are following, and one time a year over another is more stressful than another. Age is a stress factor. Coming down with a tumor or some other veterinary or some other medical problem is also a stress factor. So there's all these different things that sort of come together as stress factors that will suppress the immune response and the resource response, and the animals then come down with something that are usually pretty easily corrected with a simple antibiotic.
Okay. While we're talking about stress, one of the things I talk to people about is that little bits of stress are okay. I'd love to hear your opinion as far as building coping skills, if you will.
Sure. I have two reactions to that. One is only inanimate objects don't have any stress.
Right.
So stress, a dead animal doesn't have stress. A live animal has stress. It's a fact of definition. And so stress is an absolutely needed event inside of an animal's life, inside of a human being's life. If you don't have stress, you're just not operating and functioning. So the second layer to that, to me, is that they have to be able to have healthy ways of relieving the stress. And one healthy way to relieve the stress, as we talked about earlier, is to be able to fly or have a flight response, or to have a grooming response, or to have an anger response. Allowing an animal to have being able to get angry and bite. I'm not saying we should encourage biting, but at least gives them an opportunity to express, because if you don't have that expression, then you have frustration, and then you have the buildup of the stress, and then this leads to self-mutilation.
And I think, too, if we honestly look at, when you say, talk about biting, if we honestly look at the times when we get bitten, if you go to what the antecedent was to that bite, you're going to see that bird is trying to tell you something. It's not just, hey, I don't like you, I'm going to bite you for no reason. There's something that leads up to that, and it is that expression of anger or frustration.
Yes.
So it's interesting. The reason I ask about the stress is I was teaching at Nashville Zoo one time, and I have a slide that says, stress, is it enriching? And their veterinarian from the back of the room said, absolutely not. And her theory was, and it was a good one, or her feeling was, that we were bringing animals to her, and the keepers were bringing animals to her that were sick already, and so we didn't want to be introducing extra stress in that case, which makes perfect sense. I just feel as though there needs to be a little bit, so that it's not when that illness hits, or when that traumatic incident occurs and they need to come see you, not that you're stressful, but when they need to come see the vet,
Sure.
that it's not, something completely out of the ordinary for them.
Sure, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think, I see his or her point that if you have a sick animal already, you want to try to pull away as many stresses
Sure.
as possible. So because that will allow the cortisol levels to drop and the immune system to build again. But nevertheless, you're in a crisis situation when you're going to the vet.
Mm-hmm.
And my suggestion to people is keep your vet visits regular, but
Right.
at the same time only during a crisis that needs real solution.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to weigh a little bit about what that crisis, what you're going to solve by going to the vet with the crisis. I don't want to get too complicated here.
Sure.
With what I'm saying is, but my hope is that people are coming to the veterinarian when the veterinarian can really provide a significant response.
Right.
And that's not to say you shouldn't come to the vet and talk about husbandry and all those sorts
Mm-hmm.
of things, because I think many veterinarians do that.
Right.
I also think many veterinarians probably do not do that.
Well, that's, I spoke at AFA last year, or AAV, I'm sorry, and one of the things that we talked about was, as a veterinarian or as a vet tech, providing that education. And you as an educator originally understand the value of that piece. And I tell people all the time, if you've got a question and you research it and you still don't feel comfortable with the answer, call your vet. And if you can't talk to your vet, talk to one of the vet techs and try to get that answer. And which brings up another question for me: toxic plants.
Toxic plants.
Oh, if you go online, how many different lists are there out there? And, this is on one list, it's not on the other. And I get people all the time calling or emailing and saying, what about X?
Yeah, I don't have a huge amount to say about toxic plants in the house. I think you probably should. I think there's some plants that are perfectly fine in the house that birds can graze on, and it's a great outlet. It's a great finesse. I think if you have a question mark as to whether one of your plants is toxic, then keep your bird away from it. But
Right.
it doesn't mean that it's toxic. I can't remember the last time that I saw a bird coming into me because it ate something in the house and let me re-say that. I can't remember the last time that somebody has brought me a bird that ate a houseplant and came in and was sick from the houseplant.
Okay.
I'm just, as I'm saying that, I'm thinking back to my. There was one occasion several years ago. I don't even remember what kind of bird it was now, but it was one that had eaten the. I'm going to draw a blank on the name of the long, heavy-duty leaves that. I'm a plant guy. I mean, I know more about plants than most people. But I'm drawing a blank on the name of this.
Not aloe.
No, it's a spear-like plant. Well, anyway,
That's okay.
But that's one occasion in 20 years of looking at birds that I can
Really?
think about house plants.
Because I
Yeah.
know people get they get really uptight about oak. And I tell them, well, it's not the wood, it's the acorn, and even at that point, or the apple wood, and it may be the apple seed, it's not the wood, and
Right. I mean, in both cases, I think these are translations from what is toxic to people,
right.
that has been translated over, and oak. I mean, if we were to go out and eat oak leaves, you'd probably get away with an oak leaf or two, but it's so bitter, why would you eat it?
Exactly. Well, and that's the other issue is, I do work with raptors as well, and one of the things that comes up quite often is if you're providing items to raptors that are glove trained, that they'll accept anything you provide them as food. And I agree to some extent that if you've got this bird that's very food motivated, then that's what's going to happen. But at the same time, they know what to eat and what not to eat
in the wild.
Right.
The problem in our homes, though, is that we are forcing together bored birds with
True.
plants that may be coming from the wrong side of the world in their
and hey,
their
this
vernacular.
is kind of interesting and new to look at and
let's
play
see
with
what this is
whatever.
about, and let's But I have no problem with going out and grabbing some maple or pine or like that and bringing it into your house and giving it to your birds to let them chew down on it, and at the same time, as I said, the only thing I can say authoritatively about it is that in 20 years I've seen one bird that and it didn't die or anything, it just was a little off for a day or two, and it may have been total coincidence that it happened with this particular plant. But by and large, I don't see the problem. I don't see it. And I think people should just use some good common sense about it. Not everything in the world is poisonous. There's 660,000 different kinds of plants in the world. 440,000 are edible. So there's only a third of the plants out there that are going to be poisonous, even to a human being. Right. And we have much more sensitive systems probably than most of the birds.
Okay. I'm going to ask you this question, and this is my favorite question to ask veterinarians, avian vets. Paper towel rolls. To give or not to give?
I thought you were going to ask me phone books.
That one comes up too. But the one that I have found people feel either the most guilt over or that they've gone over to the dark side if they use them are the paper towel rolls.
Boy, again, I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. I don't. What do you think?
I honestly, and I did a little survey when I was at AAV last summer, and the answer I got the most was, in moderation, it's fine. If you're not giving them a vat of the glue that's on the paper towel rolls, it's okay. So
I don't have a strong opinion. It seems to me moderation and just common sense about a lot of this stuff. Just there's so many birds living in people's homes, and we're just not seeing. The thing that I see coming back to me all the time is Teflon Teflon. When somebody's cooking with Teflon and burns a pot, that one I see with some regularity. I say to people all the time about avocado, I think the message is so strong out there that they don't come in contact with it. Right. So I don't see that problem. But I don't see houseplant poisonings coming to me. I do see burned birds.
Zinc toxicity? Do you see zinc toxicity or?
Yes, I do. Okay. Yes. That will. And I've also seen lead poisoning from paints, from chewing around doorways and windowsills and things of that sort. Yeah.
Those are the big concerns that come up, when I'm talking to people out doing companion parrot talks and things like that. Those are the biggies. I really appreciate you telling us about your practice and what you're seeing. Right. So tell us about wildlife. We only have a few minutes left, but what you're the wild side of things here at the
the wild
center.
side. Let me tell you about the Wildlife Center and how we operate. The Wildlife Center has we're a hospital for wild animals. The thing that's cool about New England Wildlife Center is that we marry the care of wildlife very distinctly with education. And we bring volunteers and interns, undergraduate students and high school students, and even all the way down to young kids and all the way up through 90-year-olds come to our center to participate in the process of care. And we use the care of wildlife as an educational event. We teach the biology of the animals that we see. We see about 225 different species of wild animals, everything from hummingbirds to snapping turtles to coyotes and foxes and all those sorts of things. Our goal is always to return those animals to the wild. Now, the odd pet vet, where we see all the pet animals, we see that as a fee for service. So every dollar that somebody spends in our veterinary practice goes to helping us care for wildlife. And we also, take donations. Of course, we can't operate and live without donations, but we're trying very hard to earn probably 30 or 40% of our income through the process of veterinary care and selling products and foods and that sort of thing.
It's a wonderful center. Your building is a green building.
Green building, built to LEED certification. We didn't actually go through the certification process because the application fee was too expensive for us.
It's amazing, isn't it? And you do special event parties, birthdays.
Yes.
There's a play group on Tuesdays for kids.
Yep.
You do the Catbird Cafe on Saturday.
We are the only veterinary hospital in the world that has a folk and blues jam every Saturday night.
And it's so much fun, and there's so much going on here, and literally, coming in, you could learn something different every single day.
Absolutely.
The center in the upstairs is you've got all kinds of
nature center and all kinds of bones and feathers and bits and pieces of animals. Unfortunately, many of them were patients.
Wait a minute.
Unfortunately.
No. So don't take any of his advice from before. No, there aren't any parrot bones up here, are there?
No.
We don't
have. No.
But it's great because it's a please touch kind of place too,
Right.
And I watch the little ones come in and they're so excited about learning and being here, and it's really
what's exciting to me is we're in a reasonably new setting, but the Wildlife Center is about 25 years old. I've been with the center for 20 years, and it's really fascinating for me to see students come in as elementary school students who are now veterinarians, and not just veterinarians, but in wildlife research and or veterinary care of one sort or another. And one of the new things that just happened recently was I'm now seeing children of former interns come to us as volunteers and students. So we're seing a second generation.
Such a nice history. That's great. That's really amazing.
It's a very civic engagement kind of organization, and we do a really good thing by caring for wildlife and all kinds of animals.
Super. And you're at 500 Columbian Street in Weymouth, Massachusetts.
That's right.
And people can check you out on the website as well. And your website, I have to look it up.
Well, here, I can give it to you.
Go right ahead.
NE, as in Nancy in England, NEwildlife.com.
Great. And there's all the information on the different programs that you offer. And
that's right.
I know for scouts, you have scouts come in and do tours and things like that, and brownies, and it's great. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you sitting down with me today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
And now you get to listen to all of our upcoming events. Barbara and I have a bunch of stuff on the calendar. So quickly, on April 4th, I'll be at the Western Mass Bird Expo in Palmer. On April 19th, the Leather Elves will be at the Birds of a Feather Spring Show in New Hampshire. April 18th and 19th, Barbara will be in Barrie, Ontario at the 2009 Parrot Behavior and Training Workshop. And April 27th, I'll be speaking at the Animal Behavior Management Alliance Conference in Providence, Rhode Island, doing an enrichment workshop. And then Barb starts her European swing on May 9th. She's doing Parrot Behavior and Training Workshop in Finland, and on the 10th as well, she's doing a flight training workshop in Finland. The 16th and 17th of May, Parrot Behavior and Training Workshop in France. You can check that out at www.aedp.fr. May 23rd, she will be in Portugal doing her workshop, and that's for more information. You can contact Isabel Sampaio, which in her email is misabelsampaio@gmail.com. Barbara will be in northern Portugal on May 24th. You can contact Isabel for more information on that. And then May 29th to the 31st, we'll be together doing the Best Parrot Conference in Edison, New Jersey. BEST stands for Behavior Enrichment Science and Training. And Dr. Susan Friedman will also be speaking, and Joanna Eccles from World Parrot Trust, and Dr. Daryl Stiles on avian influenza. June 6th through the 7th, Barbara will be in Brisbane, Australia at the Step Up Parrots and People Learning Together. June 20th, Parrot Training and Behavior Workshop in Madera, California for Barbara. August 5th through the 9th, I'll be speaking at the AFA conference in Houston. I'll be presenting a paper on breeding birds and enrichment. August 8th through the 15th is the AAV conference in Milwaukee, and Barbara will be presenting at that event. On September 12th, I'll be speaking at the Rocky Mountain Society of Aviculture. There'll be more information about that in upcoming podcasts. In September, Barbara will also be in Clayton, California, September 19th. September 24th to the 29th, I will be at the American Association of Zookeepers teaching their enrichment workshop in Seattle, Washington. And then from September 30th to April 4th, I'll be working with companion parrot owners in Seattle, doing home visits and presenting 2 enrichment workshops. And then October 23rd to the 25th, Behavior and Learning for Veterinary Professionals in Denver with Barbara. That's hosted by the Gabriel Foundation. October 24th to the 31st, it sounds like I'll be on vacation, but being on a cruise, but I'll actually be presenting on the Parrot Lovers Cruise, and you can get more information at baldmantravel.com. And so we, as usual, we'd love to have you visit bestparrotconference.com, goodbirdinc.com, and theleatherelves.com. And I should let you know that we're now selling online on the Leather Elves. So my enrichment tip for the week, remember that you can over-enrich. Your parrot does have downtime in the wild, and you can observe those times when your bird seems to be simply hanging out, and try to give them some space around those times when it's possible. So I'm out of time for today, and if you have suggestions or questions, contact us at robin@petliferadio.com or barbara@petliferadio.com. And as always, if you'd like transcripts of this show, please visit www.petliferadio.com.
Join us every week on Wings and Things and get a bird's eye view of everything there is to know about pet birds and how to make your frequent flyer a happy camper. Wings and Things, only on PetLifeRadio.com.